Well, including the ones who are floating under the bridge.
No, I was going to say that it's close to 500.
Who did win the doctor?
Tiffany Ware. I don't know Tiffany, but our chief won $50
Yes, he did.
prize.
Ah.
He won 2 tickets right at the end, went off to do his policing duties, and was awarded
And you paid him as well.
So I'll start with Planning Commission. We have a public hearing set for October. To preface all of this, we had a special meeting at the end of August rather than our typical September meeting, as our September Monday 1st fell on a state holiday, national holiday. And so that puts us on schedule for council to be having our public hearing in November. These public hearings are regarding the zoning that we currently have. There was an application a few months ago from a owner of 2 very prominent pieces of property within town that wanted to make a text amendment to the zoning, but the zoning was not part of what his properties are zoned for currently. So council gave Planning Commission directive to get these zoning ordinances in the recommendation from council will be having R3, which is mostly it is all of the downtown area in line with what is currently downtown, and that'll prevent if a home happened to burn down, it could be rebuilt within the same standards. So that'll be coming up on our docket. That is 2 months in advance of what we were expecting, so take that, government not doing anything. We have a new chairman. He was appointed back in August, Mr. Ron Smith. And then at our special meeting, we appointed Randy Knoll as our vice chair. Mr. Chairman, did I miss anything?
I think you hit everything on the head.
Awesome. Farmers market saw a good influx of traffic this weekend. We can say accordingly to Health Fair Health, and then I'm also the president of the soccer organization here in town, Sox. We started our season 2 weekends ago, and we have over 130 kids registered. So shameless plug, with grandchildren, children for next season, register them early, you get a discount. Government services is at a meet as need be, and we were not needed, so we did not meet. Any questions?
You sound efficient.
I try.
Items for council discussion. Matt, would you please advertising public hearing for entrance corridor ordinance section 17.16. Please stand on.
Sure, and this would be Mr. Bullock's topic to introduce if he were here. He sends his regards on behalf of the Architectural Review Board. They have been, ARB, increasingly interested in aligning their entrance corridor ordinance with the town's environmental goals, aesthetics around native plants, and also our B City status. The ordinance not being very clear on what kinds of landscaping we're looking for. The ordinance doesn't express any alignment with that B City native plants and ecology, and the landscaping guidelines that detail that ordinance don't have that emphasis either. So this is the product of the ARB's work for the past 3 months. The existing entrance corridor ordinance follows the agenda on this packet, and in keeping the ordinance change as efficient as possible, ARB is looking, has recommended the inclusion of the one sentence that's bold print on your third page, where we detail the landscaping requirements. When a builder brings a new site plan to us in the entrance corridor, they would have the additional requirement, consistent with the town's B city status, new plantings shall support to the greatest extent possible native plants which maintain local ecology. And then the guidelines would provide more resources about what we mean by native plants, what we mean by bee city and pollinator. This does not affect anyone's current landscaping. There won't be any enforcement action if you have a Japanese flowering tree that is not a native flowering tree. It also only affects site plan applications that are in the entrance corridors. That's Route 6 and Route 20 coming into the historic district, where we have an interest in landscaping and want to work with the builder about what form that takes. So ARB at their meeting on the 5th of September recommended to bring this forward. The next step to change an ordinance would be to advertise a public hearing. So that's ARB's request. It's September 5th.
So, do we move forward with the public hearing for next month?
I move to recommend the public hearing in the month of October.
I'll second that.
Roll vote, please.
Just a moment.
I tried to pause.
I'm sorry, I was still a sentence or two behind. Councillor Gritsko.
Yes.
Councillor Malusi.
Yes.
Councillor Munson.
Yes.
And Councillor Peck.
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion passes.
Carpet replacement for Victory Hall, 10 Scottsville Center Arts and Nature. Matt, do you want to set this one up, please?
Sure. The town's tenant in the downstairs area of this building is SCAN, the Scottsville Center for Arts and Nature. That lease has been in place for a number of years, and the tenant has not had very many major maintenance requests. The lease places responsibility for minor maintenance items, changing light bulbs, on the tenant, responsibility for major maintenance items that might last beyond the duration of SCAN's time here upon the landlord with our building. SCAN has brought our attention to the condition of the carpeting downstairs behind us in the backstage green room, kind of classroom section of the building, separate from the theater up front. That carpeting is 10 plus years old. Commercial carpeting, I'm not certain about the padding and the condition of the subfloor underneath it. It's been cleaned several times. SCAN has requested a replacement of that carpeting. They brought one quote forward with their preferred pattern to the work session last week. Council had some concerns about the total price and the lack of competitive bidding. Mr. Crutchfield helped us pull 2 more local firms with quotes on those. We were able to specify this is exactly the carpet material we want. Here's what the all-in price, what the details of the procurement need to be to make sure we've got apples to apples. One of those quotes came in higher, the other came in lower. The product is exactly the same. I'm confident that it's an apples to apples comparison, and we can save $200 on the all-in package by using Floor Fashions in Charlottesville rather than Carpet Plus of Charlottesville. The difference in price is $45.17 to $42.70. So I'm glad we took the additional week to run the procurement. I feel pretty good that this is about the best price that we can get. The carpet prices didn't change much. You had a little bit of differences in how they ran labor and what kind of deal they could get on the padding underneath.
Are their customer ratings about equal, or?
both well regarded. They both include a 1-year warranty on the labor and a longer warranty than the manufacturer's warranty on the product.
Did you happen to inquire if any of the vendors provided a state discount since we're state government?
It was clear, I didn't specifically ask for a government discount.
It's worth asking for a receipt.
Okay.
When did
Fair.
Stan first make us aware that this thing? Reason I'm asking.
Early August.
It wasn't before that, we didn't know.
I'm sorry, I do have older emails. June 12th is the first email I have from Aaron that mentions carpet.
The reason I'm asking is just, it's more of a budgetary issue in terms of us not having kind of advance notice on. Did we know anything, is that the first time we heard about it in June, or?
Yes.
But the first time we heard about it here was this month. I mean, either some basically, yeah. What was the reason for the gap in that?
Finalizing in the lease where the responsibility needed to be. So we didn't have a lot of urgency around the lease confirming that it was definitely a town responsibility. It wasn't something that SCAN really pushed to get done before now. They didn't insist that it be on council agenda in June, July.
I don't think it would have really mattered whether we knew in June or not, because we had our budget finalized anyways. But I do think having to make an appropriation rather than sticking in another budget cycle is a little difficult.
Well, that's mine, is more the timing of just the, it seems as though it's a legitimate need.
Right.
It seems as though the need is legitimate, it's more, I would say, it sounds more like we were caught off guard, so to speak, in terms of knowing the timing and when it was needed.
That's true.
And that's
And
something.
part of that may be because there is new administration, all new people, and so they just might not have been aware of the procedure that the town has adopted.
And from your perspective as councilors, you feel like it's something that's necessary now?
It's pretty rare. I went down a few hours before the meeting started, and they've got a dehumidifier running down there right now, so.
Yeah.
So my perspective is it needs to be replaced, but I'm not sure what SCAN's programming plans are. I know that they're trying to do a lot, so they're trying to launch programming in that space. It makes sense to address it now. If they're doing a slow rollout and no programming is taking place in that space, then maybe there's further discussion. That's just information I don't have.
We have 11 programs.
That's what I thought. Okay.
In
There we
that
go.
space. Well, Valley would be in the theater problem.
Right.
If we have a bunch of little kids playing.
So that matters.
Okay. We need a motion.
Yes, please.
I move to make an appropriation for carpet replacement for Victory Hall, tenant scan, of, do I need to do the quote amount, or do I need to?
If you give me not to exceed 4270, I can certainly push for additional discounts.
Okay. Oh, because we're sales tax exempt.
Yes.
But
Okay.
also it's, we need to call for state government contract pricing in
Mhm.
addition.
Right, so, okay. Blah, 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 all of what I just said, not to exceed $4,270.25. And the code switch. Yes, blah, blah, blah. Yes, absolutely.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Tell us when you're ready, Tom.
I'm ready.
Call roll, please.
Counselor Gritsko.
Yes.
Counselor Malusi.
Yes.
Counselor Munson.
Yes.
Counselor Peck.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Next is the VHDA revitalization area authorization. Matt, again, can you set this up?
Okay. I'll show the map on this one. Thank you for the discussion on this one at work session. This is definitely one where the product before you is better because of the work session effort that we made. The Virginia Housing Development Authority is a state-backed development bank that's a lender interested in workforce housing development in the state. They primarily do mortgage work for families who don't quite qualify for commercial lending. So their most common loan product is a single-family home loan on slightly reduced interest with lower down payment requirements. They also do work in the commercial and mixed-use lending space, but their enabling legislation from the state requires that the local governments invite them in because they do compete with commercial lenders. Their mixed-use, mixed-income lending programs might relate to the renovation of a historic building, a storefront that might be getting some apartments added on to the back or upstairs of it, where it's a mix of a small business space and apartments that would be targeted towards lower income families. As far as what that means on income thresholds, when Miss York hit that $950 price point for an apartment in town, that is 80% AMI affordable workforce housing for Albemarle County. My apartment is a mixed-use, mixed-income kind of building. That's the character that we're talking about. But VHDA can't enter the market without being invited here first. At the work session, the model resolution had a list of specific properties that were sort of targeted for reinvestment, and council's question was, can we be more broad and open it to the entire historic district plus the factory zone? And the answer is yes, we can. We don't have to identify specific buildings. So the revised resolution before you references the state code that charters the Housing Development Authority and explains our purpose in we're seeking commercial and economic development for the town, but we also lack the housing for the workforce that would live here. So we need to develop both the small business spaces and the workforce housing in tandem. Many buildings in our historic district would benefit from that. The HDA can then work with realtors and advertise their products for potential buyers. There's no town budget commitment to participating.
Any discussion or questions, comments?
Thank you for exploring that broader
Yeah.
Sure.
inclusion.
Easy fix.
Carry your motion.
I move that we designate the area as a revitalization area.
Second.
Designate area as revitalization.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Counselor Gritsko.
Yes.
Counselor Malusi.
Yes.
Counselor Munson.
Yes.
And Counselor Peck.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you all very much.
And the last on our action items is the VDOT Transportation Alternatives Grant application. Matt, again, can you set this up?
This is also coming forward from work session. The project map is the more helpful part of this one. That's my head in the way. So this is turned on its side with Valley Street running the same direction across the bottom of the map and the wastewater pond here. So we have a levee walk going around and a desire to improve the sidewalk connections at the end of the levee walk near the library and the entrance to it at Dorrier Park or the end of Harrison Street. Those are termini that help to strengthen this project application. Last year we had a sidewalk grant application that was safety oriented. Fortunately, we don't have the pedestrian collisions that would generate crash data to cause that to score well with VDOT. So we did not get the safety grant award. They recommended that we apply to this transportation alternatives program, which strengthens the sidewalk infrastructure throughout the town, a common need expressed in our recent survey. So this would construct and improve ADA accessible sidewalks from the edge of the baseball field here at the beginning of the levee, along Bird Street past the library, adding some crosswalks at Page, and then continuing on Bird to Harrison, improving sidewalks where they're dilapidated or not to ADA standard along Harrison for 2 blocks, connecting to the base of the levee at the soccer field, and then improving a few spots on West Main Street, including accessible crosswalks coming out of the Scottsville school apartments. So the hope would be to have, the goal would be a wheelchair or stroller accessible loop across this area, and also improved connections from Valley Street shopping to the library, or from the Scottsville school apartments down to basic retail on Valley Street. The application would be for a budget not to exceed $500,000 over the next 2 years. That's a sufficient level of funding to do all of this work. It does have a local match requirement that would have to be budgeted or fundraised in the future. That's definitely an item for future capital improvement planning if the application is successful. We would send this in with an October 1st deadline and hear back in the spring of next year.
Is it 80/20?
Yes.
How soon would we need technical? I'm sorry.
Would our match also be spread over 2 years?
It could be. It's as the funding moves through. Every time you submit a reimbursement to VDOT, they're only going to pay 80% of that bill.
Gotcha.
Are there any additional grants we could go for that 20% match? Is that allowed?
Absolutely. Not additional funding within VDOT, so it takes you to the nonprofit sector, the public health sector, anyone who might be interested in the activity, physical activity of elders or children or families, the safety of those same vulnerable groups.
Development loan program, can we borrow money from that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Also, considering our small town status, any agency that was granting or lending to rural areas, we would emphasize our small population too.
One of the things I would say, and I may be on the side of risk, so to speak, would be realizing the effort it takes to put together an application and the time that it takes to do so. I think it's wise to move forward as much as you can. I mean, the success rate on grants, it's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
And if we get to the good problem where we actually get a grant, we still have the opportunity of saying no, even though that's not our first goal at the point. So my point simply was saying that I would recommend that not only with this one, but other ones that are opportunities for the town to see things that the town really wants done, that we would try. Again, if we say to ourselves, we're not going to move forward until we can cover that funding right now, we would almost do nothing. So I think that we would have to say, let's move forward with the recognition that it is, and it's a risk. It's a good risk to take, is all I would say. And so thank you for your efforts in putting it together, and I would recommend that we do move forward with it.
Anyone else? Motion?
I recommend
Mr. Gritzko,
Yes.
Ms. Belusi,
Yes.
Mr. Bunsen,
Yes.
and Mr. Peck.
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion passes.
Staff reports, I think there's someone sitting at the table that people may not know.
Absolutely. Proud to introduce Mr. Osiris Crutchfield, UVA intern for the fall semester. Joined us last week. Wow. Want to say a little bit about your work and your impressions so far, sir?
I'm from Charlottesville. I grew up in Quebec, so I understand all your worries and but yeah, so I got my fourth year at UVA. I study sociology. Really love the area. I've only been here for a week, so I haven't really gotten a full tour yet, but I'm enjoying my time here, and I really hope to get to know the town a lot better. Yeah, that's the deal.
We've got a sidewalk grant to work on the next 2
Yeah,
weeks.
we got a sidewalk here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate the help. Mr. Crutchfield is here 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for all the part of the day.
Thank you for your word on the carpet.
Yep. Expect to see a check for $200.
What else to share? I'm looking at my calendar since the past couple of weeks. Our scenic river assessment is next week. I believe James River Association still has space available on their boats for Friday the 27th. If anyone listening is available and interested in paddling the river, putting in at Scottsville and taking out at the New Canton Bremo Bridge area. The Scenic River Assessment helps to promote and protect our stretch of the James River. James River Association staff will guide that trip of about 15 canoes with clipboards basically looking at the plants, water quality, fish, wildlife, farming, and industrial activity of the river.
Would you push this out to Bill and Brenda Hyson?
Definitely.
They canoe, kayak, and Brenda is, I believe, the master naturalist.
Mm-hmm.
So she would,
Sure.
definitely ask them if they're interested.
Yep. Justin Doyle at James River Association is the contact. I'll share those invitations again. I think he still has space. The stretch of water above Scottsville all the way to the confluence with the Tye River in Nelson County, that's a longer stretch of river. James River Association is doing that on Thursday with a smaller group in motorboats, provided they have enough water. If it rains between now and then. Not looking good.
Is there any sort of like specific knowledge that you need to have to do this?
Not in terms of naturalists. There is a little bit more white water sometimes on that stretch below Scottsville. So they're recommending that it not be your first time in a canoe, but they'll provide all the nature education. So it should be an educational day if spotting wildlife and fish and trees is not your forte. That's okay. And this is a good way to learn it.
Just another contact, Nicola McGough has a group of outdoor enthusiastic women that she's networked with. Send us out to them as well.
Great. Okay.
And also, this is a program of DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and they're partnering with James River Association
Yes.
to see this project through.
Right. It's a state promotion and protection effort that's defined in state law. The Scenic River program turns 50 years old next year, so will be one of the larger stretches of protected river in the state if this goes.
When we can celebrate on that weekend.
Yes, I was just going to say, one final suggestion is reach out to the James River Baptist Festival. They
Yes.
love this and sound
Right.
We're now full members of the association, so.
Yes.
good.
We can do that. I will miss the next town council work session, but be back in time for the October 21st. No, I'll be back for work session. I'll be back for work session. Be out for the first half of October, but back for
So
work
where are you
session.
going?
Bring your report. Going to An Giang Province, Vietnam, for a rural development exchange through the State Department. We hosted Mr. Tai Van Nguyen from An Giang University here in May, and he'll be my host to learn about their take on flood control, local farming, small business development, and community outreach. Looking forward to it. I think we're good on agenda. If no other, we have the closed session added to agenda.
Well, maybe we should announce the $7,000 we got for the Overlook Trail.
Oh, sure. Grants. A couple of grant project updates that I mentioned. The Overlook Trail application to the State Department of Conservation and Recreation went in back a couple of months ago. The other promising funding resource for that is through the Federal Agricultural Department's Rural Development Service. They have a fairly generous grant and loan program that has financed police vehicles in the past, but can also finance this walking connection because of the public safety locus that it has. It will enable a faster high ground connection between the flood control pump station and the dam. And if in a flash flood situation, responders need to be able to move between our facilities effectively. USDA is very happy to support that project. Their application is fairly complicated and requires a level of design drawings for the facility that we don't currently have. So our planning grant application has gone through with a $7,000 award coming from CERCAP, water-related public service nonprofit organization that they're happy to help us to design the funding, design the structure, and prepare our funding application for USDA. We'll get under contract on that design work this fall and have the USDA application ready January, February, once they get their tranche of federal funding.
One other thing I'll add, Matt, just to follow up this. So there's a couple of key people from the Big Nature project that will be involved. One of them is Fred Esch, our town, the person who's been a landscape architect, and Luke will also be involved, and then hopefully Daniel Hahn from the county. So we have some good people that will be giving some input on this project.
And we will include the planning commissions, correct?
What Matt said was, she asked about the planning commission.
Certainly the updates through the progress of how this design work aligns with planning commission documents, park plans and comprehensive plans. There's also defined in our ordinance when the town is acting as a developer and builds anything on town-owned property, the same level of planning commission review applies, that we need to check that the structure matches the comprehensive plan. So as we begin to get some detail about what might be built on town property, keeping in touch with planning commission that yes, this does fit with that advisory role, and planning commission can make that recommendation back to council as we get this design to make sure that it fits.
Does the town need to pay its own application fee?
We waive that for any government entity.
Yes, we'll reverse it to ourselves.
Show me another government entity applying it here.
Anything else?
Oh, the other architectural review board report that Mr. Bullock would have shared is the facade improvement grant for downtown historic properties. AOB made excellent progress brainstorming at their last meeting about the guidelines for that facade program. There are lots of examples in the state, and they were able to take some of the best elements from that funding and match it to what we have, already a pretty rigorous certificate of appropriateness process. We have $7,000 of funding from the Main Street Association at the state, matched with local funds, so a $14,000 pool that we can make available to historic downtown property owners with a focus on local economic development. How can small business spaces be improved? That program will require a one-to-one local match, but if a property owner is interested in repainting, replacing windows, repainting mortar, adding murals or awnings, those kinds of spruce up your business at the end of the season opportunities, that call for project ideas will go out after the October ARB meeting. So look for that announcement for downtown businesses.
Is that it?
Exciting stuff. I think that's all our grants and special projects going on.
Yeah, that comes to the close of our regular session. We are going to go into closed session, so if,
I move that the council enter a closed meeting as authorized in subsection A of Virginia Code section 2.2-3711, specifically the subsection assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees,